Ladies and gentlemen, Hideo Kojima and Norman Reedus.
There once was a time when Death Stranding was a highly anticipated game. Gamers everywhere agonized for years over what the great and powerful Hideo Kojima was cooking up with his new independent team. Every new trailer that dropped was steeped in mystery and also really, really long, my god, Kojima. We all kept wondering, what the hell is this game? We kept seeing footage of Sam just walking around with these packages, making deliveries. But that can't be it, we thought. Kojima's keeping something from us. Delivering packages can't be the main game mechanic in this weird supernatural world. But then it turned out it was. Kojima gamified the act of walking in a way that was unprecedented in the AAA space. In many ways, Death Stranding is a walking simulator, more so than most of the games that are labeled as such. But as with any Kojima game, gameplay is only 50% of the experience. There is a fully realized world in this game with a varied cast of characters that have the dumbest names, and all kinds of sci-fi and supernatural elements with enough lore and exposition to make your head spin. So without further ado, this is why Death Stranding sucks, and why I love it. Now maybe at this point you're thinking I'm being hyperbolic, but I genuinely feel that some things about this game are great and some are awful. So awful. Like the dialogue. There is an untenable amount of bad dialogue in this game.
Everything's true. Except for all the lies.
And it's not all bad for one uniform reason. The nature of its badness ebbs and flows throughout the game. It would be poetic if it weren't so awkward. We got bad catchphrases like, "I'm fragile, but not that fragile," which actually gets repeated a few times. We've also got absolutely horrendous one-liners.
Honey, you ain't nothing but damaged goods.
You are damaged goods.
No, you. We've also got an actress whose English is questionable to the point that they forced subtitles on her, and yet she still has an entire fucking monologue and storyline. The fuck? And then we got people speaking overly vaguely or generally using language that is entirely unnatural. I mean, the mere act of Kojima trying to make Strand a thing. Even after playing all the way through this game twice, my brain still defaults to isolation for the term stranding. And yet there are phrases in this game like, "be stranded with love." No one talks this way. I'm getting a little worked up. Suffice it to say, the dialogue's a little weird. But actions speak louder than words, and the actions in this game are equally as weird as the words. Let's talk about chiral tears. Characters in this game will cry involuntarily when interacting with the supernatural elements of this game. They don't feel any sadness or grief or really any emotion. It's like cutting an onion. So why does it happen? It's because Kojima has seen movies, a fact that he is very eager to convey. Kojima knows that when you watch a movie and someone cries on screen, something important has just happened, usually something emotional. And so he came up with a blanket reason for people to shed those tears in his game so that he can have the facade of an emotional moment without having to come up with a new reason in each scene for those characters to be upset. And now he can have a montage of all the characters crying in his trailer and all the gamers TM can cream in their jeans while they pre-order the game. It just feels like posturing. And a lot of the game's cutscenes seem to suffer from it. This was present in MGS5 as well. I was not above falling for this posturing in the game's trailers, at least not at the time. I bought into the hype. And I was particularly curious about Higgs, the game's main antagonist. I thought his design was really cool. Honestly, I still do, but I didn't know what his motivation was or what his behavior would be. And then the game actually released, and I realized he's just a cut and paste evil wizard. "Hawk, protagonist, who are you to be so bold? I aim only to obliterate all life. What's wrong with that?" This dude's motivation is paper thin and nonsensical, and as much as I admire Troy Baker doing his best to give the guy personality, there's only so much you can do with a bad script. But at least Baker was allowed to give an interesting performance. I feel like 95% of the cast was instructed to deliver their lines like they were on horse tranquilizers. Almost every line of dialogue is delivered as if read from a grocery list. There may be important cutscenes with fancy camera movement and swelling music with dialogue that's meant to be important, but the delivery is always flat, 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 with very few exceptions. Let's use the first boss fight in Port Knot as an example. Higgs brings in some bad weather and puts on a show, introducing himself to Sam before throwing him to the wolves, or the weird squid monster. Again, Higgs is exhibiting personality, and at this point his motivations are still a mystery, so even though he literally introduces himself as the particle of God, it's mildly interesting. Through the whole scene, Sam is trying to play it cool while he lets out a silent fart, and right before Higgs warps out of there, he drops some meta commentary.
Aren't you getting tired of the grind? Isn't this what you've been waiting for this whole time? A game over.
In case you forgot that this is a video game. And then Die Hardman, God the names, calls to warn you of the impending disaster.
Heads up, Sam. According to our damage assessments, it would only take a single void out to total Port Knot City. A single BT allowed to make contact with a civilian would be enough. We can't let that happen. You've got to deal with that BT right now.
What? I'm sorry, did I just get hit up by Bill Lumbergh in my fucking cubicle? Hey Sam, so if you don't deal with this, it'll be, catastrophic. So just make sure this thing doesn't come into contact with you, okay? Thanks. So then you lob containers of your own blood at this thing until it turns into gold hands, and the crew calls in to convey their absolute joy and relief at this unprecedented victory.
Incredible. Simply incredible. For the first time in history, a human being has defeated a BT. Were you not a repatriate, I doubt it would have been possible. Not only does contact with your fluids pose no risk of triggering a void out, but
To be fair, Hartman sounds a little bit excited here, though it's more of an I just discovered a new fossil excitement as opposed to I was 100% certain an entire city was about to be obliterated and now we have a superhero on our team excitement. Plus his congratulations quickly devolve into scientific/supernatural mumbo jumbo and my eyes glaze over. Then Die Hardman chimes in to congratulate Sam for hitting his first home run in T-ball, defeating a horrific otherworldly monstrosity.
be proud, my friend. Emily's still waiting for you in the West.
Like I said, this is how almost all of the dialogue in this game is delivered. And let us not gloss over Sam in this scene. He is absolutely unaffected by the presence of this giant creature. Yes, he has presumably been dealing with BTs for a while, but this scene gives the impression that this is the first time somebody has encountered one of these creatures and survived. Certainly Sam hasn't defeated one of these things before, and yet he stoically looks on as this Lovecraftian horror approaches for the kill. I mean, my god, he has a stronger reaction when he fucking trips.
Almost toppled over.
So why doesn't he react here? Because movies. This is how heroes act in movies. So that's what Sam does. Normally, someone in Sam's position would be at least mildly concerned, probably panicking more likely, but he's cool as a cucumber. Even though he has a line later explicitly stating that he's not cut out for fighting these monsters, and yet he doesn't think twice about it. And I could go on all day with more examples of bad dialogue, flat performance, and nonsensical actions, but I think you get the idea. The thing is though, the narrative in this game gets worse as it goes on. First of all, you're getting phone calls from people constantly with more of the same dry, dull dialogue with people saying, "Hey Sam," and it really wears you down. But even worse is the fact that the cutscenes and dialogue go from stupid to boring. Nothing is worse than boring. And this game really hits its boring stride about halfway through in Hartman's chapter. Hartman will talk your ear off about fossils and the intricate details of his relationship with the beach and his coma schedule and this and that, and oh my god, I just want to deliver packages, dude. And it bleeds into pretty much all the other characters too. Most interactions in the latter half are just filled with lore, exposition, and jargon. The sequence with Amelie on the beach is pure torture.
Is French for soul. A soul that's a lie.
I will point to Cliff's storyline as the one chunk of this game that is half decent. Mads Mikkelsen, of course, does an excellent job, and the writing isn't quite dumb enough to mess it up, most of the time. Although I do feel they show too much of it before showing the full sequence at the end. But what upsets me the most is Die Hardman specifically.
Look at this dude.
And I could give several reasons, but the biggest one is his very last scene with Sam. This is after the credits have already rolled twice, 3 times, I can't even remember. This scene is great, genuinely. Unlike the entire rest of the game, Tommy Earl Jenkins is allowed to emote here, and boy, does he. His performance in this one scene is absolutely incredible, and the dialogue is decent as well. So where the fuck was that for the last 50 hours? And not just for him, for everyone. No one speaks or acts like a human being for the whole game.
Sorry, didn't mean to startle you.
And then this?
I knew he was here to kill me. To make it right. And why shouldn't he?
What happened? Did they not remember how humans behaved until they shot this scene? Now, who am I kidding? This wouldn't be the last thing that they actually shot. I'll probably never know why that scene is so much different from everything else, but I'll tell you what I do know. The game is amazing to play. I finally get to talk about why this game's great. For any issue I may have with Kojima's storytelling ability, he and his studios are always able to produce unique, addictively playable gameplay, and Death Stranding is no different. Death Stranding is one of the few games that I can actually just pop on and play. It's my go-to game for unwinding and decompressing. Most times when I play a game, there has to be a goal that I either have to achieve or make significant progress toward. There are pockets of content, however sparse or plentiful, with moments of travel in between. But the main draw of this game is the travel. You're not trying to get from one cool thing to another, you're just doing the cool thing all the time. If anything, reaching your objectives is the least interesting part. Some idiot on a hologram pops up and says, "Duh, thanks for the package, it looks good," and gives you some medals for you to chuck into the fucking distance. No one wants that, Alex! But the journey of making the deliveries, it's hard to beat, because it's not just tilting the stick until you reach your destination. It's watching the terrain to find a walkable path. It's managing your balance so you don't take a tumble and damage your cargo. It's using the tools you have on you to overcome tricky obstacles. It's praying that somebody left you a ladder because your dumbass forgot one. Now, there are a few tools which I feel can actually somewhat limit the enjoyment of the game in the latter half, namely zip lines and roadways. You can build up a whole network that maximizes efficiency for every single delivery point, but to me it takes out a lot of what makes the game fun and interesting. The zip lines are literally just a series of button presses that move you from one destination to another. Very efficient, but you're not really engaging with the game. Highways are a little better because you do have to actually drive or walk them, but it's a smooth surface that's extremely linear. No more terrain to overcome, no discovering new paths. You don't even have to contend with BTs or mules because you can just blast past them. And the director's cut actually added more roads to build. Different strokes for different folks, but it's hard for me to see what's fun about that. That said, I do have zip lines down in the snowy areas because those areas are just miserable to move through. But back to the good stuff. On top of a great gameplay foundation, this game has a great progression of skills and tools. In the beginning, you basically have your own body and some ladders to make your way through the world. But over time, you get various blueprints allowing you to make large bridges, small bridges, exoskeletal legs of various kinds, generators to charge them, vehicles, gloves to climb better, power ramps to send you flying over obstacles, shelters that restore your packages, and cargo carriers that you can also snowboard on? And that's just off the top of my head. Plus, you've got upgrades to your Odra deck that, among other things, allow you to deal with mules and terrorists more effectively. By the time the story's concluded, you've got tons of toys to play with, and you can really make this game sing if you find the right combination of tools. I'm personally a fan of the all-terrain skeleton plus a level 3 stabilizer. You can really clear some ground with that double jump. And I did say double jump. I'm not sure what the percentage is like, but I'm guessing there are some people who have played this game that are completely unaware that such a thing is possible in this game because it's pretty context sensitive and it's never mentioned to the player as far as I can tell. And this game is filled with little details and secret mechanics that you can keep discovering hundreds of hours in. Like the fact that BB can deflect bullets with the Odra deck in-game when she gets excited. Now, to be fair, I'm not entirely sure if this is something that could always happen, or if it was added into the original PC version, or for the director's cut. It's a little hard to parse that stuff out. But either way, Kojima's games have always had these sort of bonus mechanics. They're not necessary for completing the game, but they add some nice variety to the gameplay if you happen to discover them, whether organically or from discovering them online. Peeing on BTs, turning your camera to dismount a zipline in a particular direction, using talismans. Could they be more cryptic about the talismans? Not all those examples were exciting and flashy, but it's all emergent stuff that keeps the game interesting for hours and hours beyond the fact that it's fundamentally well made. My one hang-up about the gameplay is the combat. It's not bad, it's fine. Unless we're talking about the cliff segments, those parts can lick my taint. But for the most part, it's just fine. It just feels like it distracts from the game's main mechanic. It's almost like the devs were worried that if it were all package delivery, the gamers TM wouldn't accept it as a real game. I can't help but wonder what this game would be like if they just went 100% on the delivery and passed on the combat. At least as far as mules and war flashbacks. If they left only the BT combat in, that could probably allow for some more creative weapons in combat. As it is, you're mostly using assault rifles, grenades, rocket launchers, and so on, but they look funny and they have a couple different ammo types. And there are a small handful of unconventional weapons. Who knows, maybe they tried removing human combat at some point and it caused pacing or progression issues of some kind. I can't go any further without paying big respect to the game's presentation and the sound design in particular. Sound design isn't one of the things I especially pay attention to all the time, but this game undeniably knocks it out of the park in that department. Every flash of an icon, alert noise, the sound of Sam's breath inside an oxygen mask, whatever sound is coming out of this thing. It all just sounds so satisfying and gels together amazingly. Speaking of that scene, this game has an incredible sense of atmosphere. The dialogue and performances definitely sour it at times, but in terms of the world that you can see and hear, it's something else. A wonderful marriage of great art design and big graphics. Even Sam himself is incredibly well realized. The devs really went out of their way to give him an abundance of little dialogue clips, various animations, and personal quirks, based almost entirely on Norman Reedus, of course. Is it a little much at times? Yes, sometimes Sam breaks into a casual walk when I'm trying to sprint, and sometimes I get locked out of doing something in the private room because he wants to point at something, but for the most part, it's just a nice addition that brings me into the game an extra bit. But I think I've made my point. TLDW, story bad, gameplay good. It's still not for everyone, but I think the gameplay stands head and shoulders above a lot of the stuff that's coming out today. So I would strongly recommend playing Death Stranding if you haven't. And if the narrative stuff rubs you the wrong way, you can skip the cutscenes, trust me. Just don't be surprised if you're suddenly carrying a nuclear bomb.